Now, if you see or use plastic in your household or your business, it was probably made by Qenos. Now, Qenos is the sole manufacturer of polyethylene and polymers here in Australia. Its raw product makes packaging for products that include Pura Milk, Tip Top, Sacks of Salt, Tim Tams, Smith's Crisps, VB, Victoria Bitter, White King, Glad Wrap, Morning Fresh, Willow, Huggies. We could go on and on. Take Qenos away and what do you have? Well, right now, though, the Chinese owner of Qenos, which is ChemChina, has a deal to sell out to Australian property developer Logos. Now, that potentially spells the end for its operations in Altona in Melbourne and Botany in Sydney. Now, while some Green voters in those areas quite clearly might cheer, its closure would create a vacuum and a risk to this nation's sovereign capability. Helen Millicer is the director with One Planet Consulting and a consultant to the Australian Food and Grocery Council's Plastics Recycling Scheme and joins me now. Helen, many thanks for your time. As I point out, Greens would probably cheer the end of a plastics manufacturer here in Australia, but the reality is those plastics are still going to be made somewhere and then imported, correct?
That is true, but we would lose far more than just plastic packaging. We would lose the manufacturer of plastic pipes. We would lose the capacity that Qenos provides, which is ethylene manufacture into this country, which also is used for cleaning solvents for all sorts of applications, for brake fluid, for a wide range of applications. So the downstream impacts of losing Qenos would be astronomical to the Australian economy and to our modern way of life.
So you talk about sovereign risk. So you do explain some of those things there, but where is sovereign risk in making that stuff here in Australia versus importing it here on a ship?
Well, we import some of that already, but the fact that we have the most significant diverse manufacturer in the world located here in Australia in a polyethylene manufacturer of Qenos would be absolutely astronomical. So Qenos is the fundamental building block, if you like, the foundation for many supply chains in this country, and they also supply to other countries as well. They are a jewel in the Australian crown in manufacturing. They've been here for decades, and they supply the most diverse range of products into the Australian and our regional market of any polyethylene manufacturer in the world. They are unique in the world for the diversity of products that they make, and it's not just plastic packaging.
So then there's one other aspect of this, because gas is quite clearly one of the key stock ingredients that will go into the manufacture of any ethylene or polyethylene. And in particular, Qenos in Victoria has had trouble in actually sourcing those long-term future contracts for gas. So is that a fundamental disadvantage for that business here in Australia?
Of course it is, and that's been a major concern for Qenos and a number of other manufacturers for a long period of time. It's been a policy failure in this amongst Australian governments that we've failed to secure and appreciate, and indeed with media as well, that oil and gas are fundamental building blocks for our modern way of life. They're not just used for consumption or combustion. In actual fact, gas is so valuable as a commodity that we should be using it and preserving it for the manufacture of pipe, pharmaceuticals and all cleaning products and all the wonderful things that make our life as they are, rather than burning it for just heat or electricity. So yes, it's a fundamental issue. Australia is the only country in the world that has its own gas reserves, its own gas production, but doesn't preserve gas for its own domestic use.
So then come back to Australia's manufacturing capability, because if Australia loses an industry as fundamental as making ethylene and polyethylene plastics, then what does it say about the future for other manufacturers here in this country?
Well, indeed, it's rather like losing the car manufacturers. Gaps may be filled by imports, but it means that we lose the skills, the expertise, the manufacturing base as well. A number of other downstream suppliers or manufacturers will be at risk. They'll have to import more from overseas, whereas previously they were able to source that from Qenos. So it's fundamental that we not just focus on the biotechs and the glossy kinds of industries in Australia. We also appreciate that which is fundamental to our way of life. If we don't have packaging manufacture here, we really hold grave risks for our food production if we do not have the capacity to make our own materials for our homes. Then we are reliant on import of products to make our own and build our own homes. So these are the sorts of supply chains and manufacturing interlinkages that are fundamental for good government industry policies. If we want to go for a circular, low emissions future, which we must do to keep up with the rest of the world, then we have to preserve our manufacturing capacity here.
And if that means using our gas to create polyethylene and plastics rather than burning that gas, that you think would be a better solution?
Oh, by far. Once you burn it, it's gone. And you're also creating carbon pollution at the same time. Whereas alternatively, far better to put it into long life product like your water pipes for water treatment, for other sorts of activities which are fundamental to our way of life. Far better to use it for that than to burn it for short-term benefit.
Yes. Helen, Millicer, many thanks for your time on the program today. It's going to be interesting. We'll keep a watch on what happens to Qenos. Many thanks.